Welcome to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.
It's here, the All Eers podcast, the latest edition of the All Eers podcast, and we are previewing the Men's College World Series happening in Omaha starting on June the 12th and going all the way until June the 22nd, if necessary, for a decisive Game 3 in the Men's Baseball National Championship game. But one of the things I want to discuss, because obviously, as everybody has seen in the news, the West Virginia Mountaineers making the College World Series for the first time in program history after scoring 29 runs in 2 games against the Cal Poly Mustangs inside Kendrick Family Ballpark up in Morgantown. And what a fantastic atmosphere. Those last 8 days, if you haven't already, go to WVGazetteMail.com. Check out all the coverage that I did, along with photos from Sean McAllister, Mary Everett, David Malcolm, and David Pinnick as well. A plethora of content for you guys, so I highly recommend to go dive into all of that. And we'll also have more content for you all, again, on our website, WV Gazette Mail, leading up into Omaha with WVU playing Troy on Friday at 2 p.m., and then moving forward until WVU season does come to an end out in Omaha. I will actually be out in Omaha live. We will also be doing some podcasts out there, so be tuned and make sure you follow us. Also, announcement, be sure to follow us on our new Facebook page. Yes, an All Eers podcast page is now up and live on Facebook. All you have to do, very simple, just go on Facebook, look up All Eers, hit the follow button. Hey, if you want to invite friends, by all means, recommend it. It's going to be a great time, great podcast as we've been doing thus far, and great material coming up, not only this week, but also moving forward as well. But with that being said, we got a great guest for you all. However you may be listening to it, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. But we spoke a couple of weeks ago with Randy Mazey, who I identified as the architect of WVU's success on the baseball diamond. And for good reason. Coached 11 seasons with the Mountaineers, leading to his retirement in 2024. Now Steve Savins has taken the reins and has led WVU to the College World Series. But when you have an architect with a project, you normally have the big guy, the boss man, as some people would say. And that gentleman is Mr. Oliver Luck, former athletic director at West Virginia University. He was there from 2010 to 2014. I really wanted to get his perspective on a lot of different things, and one of those being, again, WVU making the College World Series, but also where was this program at in the early 2010s? So please welcome me in joining, and a warm welcome to Mr. Oliver Luck. Oliver, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Taylor. My pleasure to be here.
So, my man, to start, we're going to bounce around. As I told you before, we're going to bounce around a lot, but I want to get your opinion to start just in regards to this season, the 2026 season. 45 wins, a new program record for this baseball club under Coach Steve Savins, who's in his second season. Your impression of this team and just the amount of success that they have they've garnered throughout the course of the season, leading to a trip to Omaha.
Well, you're right in calling Randy the architect for the time that he spent really taking over when we were rock bottom. And, people kind of forget Coach Savins was Randy's top assistant for a number of years. And what Steve's done in the last 2 years is really phenomenal. It may be one of the most unexpected runs, I think, in any sport in WVU's history. So, every other alum, I'm following the baseball program, as I've always done, since I was athletic director, and I'm really proud of the work that Coach Savins, his staff, and the players have done. Just phenomenal. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, acknowledge the thousands of fans that have come out to the Kendrick Family Ballpark and created, I think, one of the great atmospheres in college athletics, period. So, kudos to everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's 100% right. That crowd, I was talking with our photographer, Sean McAllister, about this. I don't think I've ever seen a crowd of that magnitude over the course of an 8-day, week-long, whatever time frame you want to throw in there in regards to games in that ballpark, or even in general. The amount of support that program has garnered and harnessed over the last week and a half, truly unbelievable. And again, I know people talk about how football and men's basketball are the monsters, but with baseball and now recently women's basketball emerging, man, I'll tell you what, WVU is slowly becoming a bigger school just in the grand scheme of things with success athletically. Your thoughts?
Well, everything's driven by football, right? That's the reality in today's world of college athletics. And, I think our Mountaineer fan base for football is tremendous, and I'm very excited about Rich's second season back in Morgantown. But there's a knockoff effect, when people are excited about one sport, they tend to share that excitement with other sports. And you think about, how well our soccer teams, men's and women's teams have played recently. You think about women's basketball. I think, didn't we set a record that we had set way back when I was athletic director against the Baylor women's team? But I think when we hosted for a regional?
Yeah.
Women's basketball, we set an attendance record, and the most people to see a women's sport in West Virginia. So obviously our rifle team, right, which is a co-ed team, wins the national championship seemingly every third year or so. So there's a lot of good things happening in Morgantown. I couldn't, I can't help but give Ren Baker a lot of credit, and Mike Benson, our president, and the board for being very supportive of athletics. It's, as people say, it's the front porch of a university, and it's important that we punch above our weight, let's say, in all of our athletic programs.
Absolutely. So before we continue talking about what's currently happening, let's go back in time, because again, as I mentioned when I introduced you, you were the athletic director at WVU from 2010 to 2014. And just for people that don't know about where baseball was at the beginning of the 2010s, in 2010 they went 27-30. Following year, 28-27. Then from then, 23-32, 33-26, 28-26, and then 27-27. So before we talk about the process of hiring Randy Mazey and getting what is now Kendrick Family Ballpark, how close was this baseball program in dissolving and just completely just shutting down that department whenever you were athletic director?
So I'll sort of put all this in context. I become athletic director, succeeding my buddy Eddie passed along, and my first year was really spent almost exclusively on getting the Mountaineers into a power conference, what then was called an AQ conference, right? The Big East was in the process of collapsing. Pitt and Syracuse, you may remember that. Pitt and Syracuse announced they were leaving the Big East, which I think left us with only 6 football schools. So I spent really the first year of my tenure as the athletic director focused solely on getting us into a power conference, and that turned in obviously to the Big 12 and all of that. So it wasn't until maybe the beginning of my second year as AD that I started to really take a much deeper look at a lot of our programs, and baseball was one of those programs that we had for over a century. We've been playing baseball at WVU, but we've been we were extraordinarily mediocre. I think we made the tournament once during the 18 some years of Coach Van Zandt's tenure, and our facility was under par. Players literally had to dress in their dormitories or in their car before the game. There was no locker room. The players and coaches for both the home and visiting team had to go to the restroom in the public restroom with the fans. Randy Mazey can tell some hilarious stories about getting advice, from folks in the restroom during the fifth inning break or whatever. So we were not a very good team. The Big East was not a very good baseball conference, in large part because of weather. A lot of games would get rained out. And the university didn't really fund baseball appropriately. It was an old venue. I was embarrassed, quite honestly, by the venue and by the lack of interest, et cetera. So you referenced this. I called a summit, if you will, invited a whole bunch of folks who know a lot more about baseball than I did, because of course I was a football guy. But I called this summit Ken Kendrick, West Virginia, class of 1965, owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He sent up one of his top minor league baseball guys, the Nutting family, of course, who own the Pirates. They sent down to Morgantown for this summit one of their top minor league developmental guys, and a whole bunch of other folks that that I wanted to put together in a room. And the question simply was, can we do what is necessary to be competitive against schools like the University of Texas in baseball or TCU in baseball, schools that have won national championships multiple times? Do we have the wherewithal to do what we need to do to be competitive? If we don't, then we can drop the sport, because there's no sense, hosting baseball games at Old Hawley Field without a massive upgrade. So that was really the discussion that we had. And quite honestly, dropping the sport like Iowa State had done, dropping the sport of baseball was on the table. I didn't want to do that. I was biased towards keeping it and rebuilding it. But we really had to kind of walk through an entire plan to make sure that we had the wherewithal to, number one, completely revamp the program in terms of how it was funded by the athletic department. And also, number two, and this was super critical, was can we raise the dollars, find the money to build a brand new stadium? And if we can do that, do we have the connections to bring a minor league baseball team into that stadium, which was one of the conditions that was put on the development of that ballpark through the so-called tax increment financing model that we use with the state government and county government. So it's all fairly complicated in that sense, but I would tell you that simply put, dropping the sport was absolutely on the table, not a preference, and of course we didn't do it, thank goodness, but it was an option at that point.
You mentioned the word embarrassed, and that caught my attention when you said that. I want to ask you just from that perspective, was it more of just a cosmetic thing in regards to, obviously people go to the Milan Puskar Stadium and they just see how great of a venue that is, from the press box to the skyline. If you are high enough to see and look down onto the field, people know about what is now Hope Coliseum and the history and the lineage with that. You walk in, there's just so much history within that venue. You can go down the line as well, but was when you mentioned the word embarrassed, was it more of a cosmetic thing, or what was it exactly?
Well, I'll tell you this. So I think you may know I attended the University of Texas School of Law.
Mm-hmm.
Got my law degree from UT during my time with the Houston Oilers. I lived, when I was in Austin attending law school, very close to Disch-Falk Field, which is the home of the University of Texas baseball team. And I'd walk over there occasionally and watch a baseball game. I went up there every spring semester for law school, which is, of course, the baseball season. That's a beautiful facility, right? I don't know the capacity, 8,000-9,000. They pack it, just absolutely gorgeous. So I would have been embarrassed to invite the University of Texas baseball team in a conference series to come to Morgantown and play at Hawley Field the way it was structured. It was tiny. Again, there were no facilities there whatsoever, hardly any parking. Folks that don't remember Hawley Field, maybe younger fans of the WVU Mountaineers, they should just drive over next to the Coliseum and take a look at it and make your own judgment. If you remember, after I hired Randy, we played a couple of years, a lot of our home games on the road. We played at Charleston at the Gomart Ballpark. We played down at Beckley. I think we played a game or two either in Princeton or Bluefield, I forget. We played a lot of games on the road because, again, I was quite honestly somewhat embarrassed by the condition of Hawley Field. It was really the equivalent of a high school ballpark, and I didn't want to embarrass the university with bringing Oklahoma or TCU or Texas or whomever into a game there. So, embarrassed may be a strong word, but we wanted to be competitive absolutely in every one of our sports in the Big 12, and that included baseball. And of all the sports we sponsor at West Virginia University, I would imagine that baseball was the one that was furthest behind, our new competition in the Big 12. We really needed to make a quantum leap to become competitive and make Mountaineers proud of what they have in the state.
When you're going through this process of trying to piece together the pros and cons of keeping this baseball program, you mentioned the baseball summit, which I'll ask when we come back from our break, but when you're trying to convey to people, whether it just be normal people or major donors for WVU. How did you go about conveying to them, hey, help us out here. It's going to cost a little over $20 million to build a brand new stadium here in Morgantown. What went into that, just in regards to, one, the facility aspect, but also, two, just trying to keep this program afloat long enough that way Randy Mazey could create this program into what it is today?
Well, there were really sort of two buckets, I think, of things that needed to be done for the baseball program. And thankfully, I had, great advisors like Ken Kendrick. I mean, here's a West Virginia grad who owns a professional baseball team, the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I was on the phone with Ken all the time during that process, and to take his advice. And the same thing with the Nutting family, up with the Pirates. But there were two buckets of things. One was sort of the traditional, let's totally revamp the team in terms of number of scholarships and coaching staff, et cetera. But the second piece was getting a ballpark built. And this is a fairly complex topic, and we could talk about this for a long, long time. But building the ballpark did not cost the university any money. We used a financing model called TIF, T-I-F, tax increment financing, that basically paid for the stadium. And we partnered up with Mon County. I spent a lot of time with the county commissioners, in particular, Bill Bartolo, since passed away, but one of the county commissioners that really spearheaded this effort. But we spent a lot of time with the county, a lot of time with the state governor, Earl Ray Tomblin. He actually even called a special session for the state legislature to approve this TIF, the tax increment financing scheme. And that's the reason, quite honestly, the ballpark is up at the mall, because number one, there was property up there. Number two, there was a TIF, a tax increment financing zone, that had been put in place previous to us, the Mountaineers, coming up and looking to build a ballpark. Keep in mind, at that point in the history of the athletic department, we had just gotten into the Big 12. Money was scarce because we were not getting a full share. We were on a 4-year step up in terms of what the Big 12 was paying out to us. Now we've been a full member for years, but we and TCU, when we went into the conference together, we were both, I think we started at 50% of the payout, and then 66% the next year, and then, 82% the following year, and finally in year 4, it was 100%. So money was scarce. We didn't have $20-some million to build a ballpark. We had done hardly any fundraising for baseball in the previous 20 years since I got there. So the money was scarce, and I had used tax increment financing previously in my career in Houston, and was able, because I understood the concept and how it worked and who you needed to get on board, et cetera, we were able to put that all together with the help of the county, with approval from the state legislature. And that's how that ballpark got built. The one condition that Governor Tomblin put on supporting the TIF and calling the special session was getting a minor league team. He basically said to me, Oliver, I'll support this bill and we can get it through the legislature, but you need to go out and find a minor league baseball team to share the building with the Mountaineers. He didn't want just the stadium for WVU. He wanted it to be, and he was absolutely right, wanted it to be, a stadium that the folks throughout the summer, June, July, August, after the college season, that folks could enjoy. So we went on a search for a minor league baseball team. Lo and behold, we convinced the Jamestown, New York Jammers. Jamestown's about an hour south of Buffalo, near Lake Chautauqua. We convinced the Jamestown Jammers to move their rookie league team down to Morgantown. They became the West Virginia Black Bears. They no longer exist because MLB changed their entire minor league system. But for, 6-7 years, 8 years maybe, the Black Bears were playing summer ball games in the stadium. And that was great for the community, great for economic development for Mon County. So those are all things that, many folks have forgotten, but sort of the story of how the ballpark came together. But the ballpark was critical. If you ask Randy Mazey, Randy, would you have left East Carolina's head coach to come to WVU without the promise of a stadium. I didn't know he'd say no way, absolutely not. He was doing a great job at East Carolina. I really wanted him to get to Morgantown, but the notion that a stadium was going to be built, the promise, if you will, was really totally the primary reason that Randy came to Morgantown, and thank God for that.
No, absolutely. That was actually one of the things that Randy had mentioned to us when we had him on just a couple of weeks ago, was the conversations that you had with him saying, hey, we're building this ballpark here. We'd love to have you be a part of it and whatnot. And that, truthfully, I think that's not really verbatim, but along the lines, yeah, that ballpark was a very key factor in that. So we're talking with former WVU athletic director Oliver Luck. Our conversation with Luck continues right after this break. This is All Eers.
As the game gets faster, stronger, more dynamic, your equipment has to keep up. Introducing the Riddell Axiom, the next evolution in football protection, designed to match the speed and strength of today's athlete. Contact West Virginia Riddell representative Casey Turley at 304-552-5960. Gear up, play smart, stay protected.
HD Media Sports is your one-stop destination for top high school and college sports coverage in the Mountain State. From Morgantown to Mingo County, our award-winning reporters keep you informed about your favorite teams and players, including exclusive coverage of the Marshall Thundering Herd and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Follow HD Media Sports on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest news, features, and game coverage.
Rolling along here on the All Eers podcast, we're joined by former WVU athletic director Oliver Luck. And Oliver, going back to this whole cycle, or not really the cycle, but this whole process with the baseball program in the early 2010s, I want to ask you a personal question. How much patience did this take out of you, or how tested was your patience during this whole process? Because you mentioned the whole TIF process, getting the ballpark actually created, having your ball club play on the road in different venues. I mean, your patience, it got tested a lot, didn't it?
Well, I think patience is a virtue, as we all know. I will say that immediately after Randy took the job and put his staff together and started to recruit, I noticed, even with all these games on the road that we were playing, and including games that we were winning, in Charleston and Beckley and elsewhere, Southern West Virginia. But I immediately sensed that there was an uptick in interest. The kids were playing better. There was a better attitude. We were, to be fair, we were supplying the full number of scholarships that baseball could have back then. That wasn't the case prior. To me arriving as athletic director. So there was a steady increase in the competitiveness. And there had to be, because instead of playing, I'm making this up, instead of playing Providence or, Villanova in baseball, we were playing Oklahoma, Texas, and TCU. And, Randy recognized that. He recruited much better. Randy's a pitching guy at the end of the day. So our pitching, became much more competitive, if you will. So it took patience, but once the ballpark opened up, I think it was Katie bar the door. We're off to the races because Mountaineer Nation really did come out and support. I'll say one other thing, Taylor, that I think is important that at least I thought about a lot, and I had this thought going back to being a college student, a football player at WVU. Great football fans in Morgantown, obviously tremendous basketball fans, men's and women's. But there was never anything in the spring that Mountaineer fans could rally around. Our most successful team, the rifle team, doesn't play in the spring, and it's not a spectator sport to begin with. But my desire to improve dramatically the baseball program was really a desire to provide something in the spring that Mountaineer athletic fans could rally around. Baseball is a great sport, the American, the national pastime. And look at the excitement we had. I think that might have been, it looked like 10,000 people at the Kendrick Family Ballpark for the second Cal Poly game. So I wanted something that's sort of filled a need in the spring, something more than the spring football game, which really has, across the country, spring games aren't what they used to be. So I really wanted something in the spring that Mountaineer fans can rally around, and the natural sport for that is baseball.
You're 100% correct in saying that, because I think one of the other things as in today's day and age is the power, as crazy as this to say is, the power of social media also brought in even more thousands, even millions of people just honed in on Mountaineer baseball. I think a lot of people have deemed this team America's team, just in the way that they've been resilient. They've responded in really key situations. I think that it was WVU Baseball's main Twitter page posted the graphic earlier today as we were recording this on a Tuesday. They had amassed over 33 million views on their Twitter page just simply from the regional and super regional play. That is just unbelievable. And then obviously Country Roads, after beating Kentucky in the Morgantown regional with the fans and the ESPN broadcast kind of turning down the announcer mics and allowing Country Roads to be played from the fans singing and the players and the coaches singing and support staff singing as well. That reached NBC Nightly News. I personally, this has just been an even bigger picture as to the advertising or even the marketing of West Virginia University. I think a lot of that goes back to where this program was. So just the marketing side of things, similar question I asked you in that first segment, but the marketing side of things as well, along with the financial perspective, that marketing as well had to have been tough too whenever you were trying to figure out all these different aspects of keeping this baseball program relevant, correct? It's just, how can we market this in a way to continue to bring people in or bring new people in at the same time? Because I feel that there's a big new wave of people that will be honing in and watching in and tuning into WVU baseball whenever they take the field on Friday at 2 p.m., right?
Sure. Well, I guess I would say a couple of things. One, we talked a little bit earlier, about athletics, sports being the front porch of a university. And I serve in the Board of Governors. This is my second stint on the Board of Governors. I care deeply about West Virginia University and, about students who are in Morgantown and future students who we want to come to Morgantown to go to school. And you can't buy the type of advertising, the type of promotional value that we've seen over the last, even just 3 or 4 weeks as we went into the Big 12 championship tournament, now the NCAAs. That is absolutely tremendous. So that's been great for the university, and that's why a university does sports, is moments like this, where you really see the front porch. The second thing I would say is, WVU athletics has always been incredibly important for the university in the North Central West Virginia community, but it's also the flagship of a great state, the state of West Virginia. And people from Charleston and Beckley and, all places, the Eastern Panhandle, the Northern Panhandle, you name it, right? They love coming to Morgantown for football, basketball. I wanted them to come for baseball as well, right? So I think of all of the flagship schools across the country, we may have as many non-WVU graduates or, non-alumni come up to watch WVU baseball because it's the team for the state of West Virginia. And I think that's critical. And I've always, even as a player back in the late 70s, early 80s, I always recognized how important WVU athletics was to the state, not just for alumni, students, or the local, the North Central West Virginia community. So you're right, though. The exposure that the university has received from this unbelievable run is really phenomenal. And let's keep it going. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. So going back to this baseball summit, you mentioned that there was a collection of guys and just baseball personalities in general. You mentioned Ken Kendricks as well, the gentleman from the Pirates. You mentioned Steve Swisher was also a part of this as well, the father of Nick Swisher, who had a very successful Major League Baseball career for a variety of MLB teams. But when you were having these initial meetings with these individuals, was it more constructive or was it more critical in the response of just the critical thinking of everything had to be amped just in regards to, okay, are we gonna axe this thing or are we gonna continue to move forward, and how can we rejuvenate it in a way that rallies people back to this program?
Well, I think the fundamental question was an existential one. Should WVU support a baseball program? Because and if so, what do we need to do to support it at a level that will allow us to be competitive with the schools like Texas, TCU, Oklahoma, et cetera. So it was absolutely an existential question. People have asked me, why did you invite Nick Swisher? Steve Swisher, Nick's dad. The Parkersburg guy. Steve played at Ohio U and was a great player. But I wanted to ask a guy like Steve Swisher, what would it take for you and your son to have committed to WVU? Why didn't you? And what would we need to do in Morgantown to attract an in-state player as good as Nick Swisher was back in the day? I wanted, hard answers, if you will. I didn't want people to, placate me or whatever. But everybody that was involved in that group, including Chris Wallace, who at the time, he's Elkins native. His dad played baseball at WVU. Chris was the general manager of the Memphis Grizzlies. There's a bunch of different people with different ideas. But the fundamental question, again, was this existential one. Can we do what we need to do with the baseball program to be competitive, with the great schools in the Big 12? That I didn't want to embarrass ourselves and have 15-2 games, with against some of those really powerful schools. So there was a very existential one. Everybody in that room gave me phenomenal advice. If I had to summarize the best bit of advice that I got, it was from a gentleman named Graham Rossini. He's now the athletic director at Arizona State. Graham was working for the Diamondbacks, and Ken identified him as the guy that could really help us think through these issues. Rossini said to me, he said, listen, because I asked him about recruiting. Can we recruit athletes good enough to compete with those high school kids who, play all year round in Texas or Florida or, California, et cetera, in the southern part of the country? He said, listen, the athletes that are in Ohio, West Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, our traditional recruiting grounds, Maryland, Department DMV, metropolitan Virginia, DC area. Those young players are fantastic. They're just as talented as the kids in Texas, Florida, whatever. But the kids up north may only play 35, 40 games a year. The kids down south are playing 100 games a year as high school kids. So those southern kids might be a little bit more developed. And he said, but those kids up north are just as good. They just haven't played as much. And maybe it's because they're good athletes. Maybe they're the quarterback of the high school football team or the point guard on the basketball team. But once you get those kids in, you can develop them and give them a year and a half, and they'll have caught up, if you will, right? They'll have caught up to the level of some of the kids from the South. So the advice, though, that he gave me was, when you go out and look for a coach, Oliver, and this is again from Graham Rossini, when you go out and look for a coach, look for somebody from this part of the country, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, where we recruit, that understands that you have to develop the northern kids a little bit differently than kids from the South. Again, because those northern kids, they're just as good baseball players, but they might be a year behind because of the weather. They haven't played in those games. And people may not know this, but do you know where Randy Mazie is from, where he grew up?
Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, I should say.
Absolutely. Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And if there's a town that resembles Morgantown in Pennsylvania, it's Johnstown. So, Randy was the perfect guy because he understood exactly what Graham Rossini had been telling me. And if you look at guys like J.J. Weatherholt or others who, have grown up in this part of the world, right? And they've gotten developed, and now they're off to the races playing in Major League Baseball. So I think the advice that, and that's just one bit of advice that I received from Graham Rossini, but the advice collectively from that group was absolutely instrumental in sort of figuring out how we could build the program and get to a point where we are today.
We keep mentioning Randy Mazie, so I want to kind of go through that process and ask you about that as well, because obviously he had a very successful career here at WVU, got here in 2013, ended in 2014, I should say. In 2013 was his first season, I should say. But talking about Randy, you mentioned how successful he was at East Carolina, brought a regional to Morgantown in 2019, then made a super regional appearance in 2024, which has now led to 3 consecutive appearances to the super regional round by the Mountaineers. But when you look at Randy Mazey and just his makeup and who he was as a coach, both on and off the field, what stood out to you about Randy Mazey during the process of trying to get this program back to what your vision was for them? How did he kind of fit in to what you were thinking?
Well, first of all, going back to the previous story, he was a guy that really understood that players in this part of the country, needed to be developed a little bit differently than guys, from the South. So I thought, that mindset was tremendous. Randy was also a pitching guy. I had a number of my baseball guys at the summit telling me, listen, you've got to improve every aspect of your program, but the quickest way to win games is through, having a pitching coach who really is capable and can go out and get, great pitchers. And if you look at what Randy's done over the years with guys like Alex Manoah in the past and many others, that bore itself out as a quick way to become competitive. You can always rely on pitching. Sometimes you can't rely on the bats. But Randy also had, just a great way about him. Tremendous family man. His wife Amanda was right by his side, all along the way. He was willing to put the baseball team on a bus and drive down to Beckley for a series, or in Charleston or elsewhere. Things that we did the first couple of years in his tenure before we were able to get the new stadium completed. But he built a tremendous atmosphere. He went out and raised a bunch of money. He was probably one of our best coaches in terms of fundraising. And, literally we started baseball fundraising from almost ground zero. There had been very little done in the past. And he did what he really was supposed to do and needed to do, which is start to win games and, start to win a series against some of the Big 12 schools that we're now playing, Oklahoma, Texas, et cetera. So, I think people began to realize, hey, this guy, he's got it. He understands, what it takes. He's the right hire at the right time. We gave him the support that he needed in terms of scholarships and, everything else. And most importantly, got the new ballpark built. He wasn't crazy about sharing that ballpark with the Black Bears. But I said to Randy, tough luck, my friend, Randy. That's the condition that Governor Tomlin put on there. And, when the Mountaineer says he's going to do something, he goes out and does it. And we said that we were going to get a minor league team, and we have it here. So let's figure out how to, join forces with the Black Bears and turn Morgantown, into a real baseball community, which it's become. So, I give him all the credit in the world for doing what he was able to do in some very challenging circumstances, particularly in those couple of years before the new stadium got completed.
I often ask players, even coaches as well, that aren't from the state about adopting the state of West Virginia as well. And I get various answers each time, but they all kind of have a similar theme to them. But from your perspective as an athletic director and even as an administrator, when you were going through the process of hiring someone out of state, or even someone that hardly has any ties to the state of West Virginia to begin with, obviously Mazey is from the state of Pennsylvania, I should say, and then came by way of East Carolina. How important was that for you, trying to find individuals to become coaches at WVU that, one, understood the state from a cultural perspective, but also have them understand how important WVU altogether is to the state of West Virginia?
So, well, I think when any athletic director at the university is out looking for coaches or, even other administrators to work on, in the department, he always, certainly in my experience, I would always talk about the importance of West Virginia University athletics, the state of West Virginia. We're the only Power 4 school, back 15 years ago when the Big East was still around, or 20 years ago, we were the only, AQ school in the state. We've had, a tremendous legacy in many of the sports, including the Olympic sports, with, gold medalists. We've got guys like Jerry West and Sam Huff in their respective Hall of Fame, on and on and on. And I would emphasize that the Mountaineers are the team, right? Writ large, capital letters, the team for all West Virginians, both those living in the state still and those who, left for whatever reason. And as you know, there's a large WVU diaspora really around the country. But most people understand it intellectually, and then they come to Morgantown, accept the position, come to Morgantown, and they realize, oh my God, yeah, this is unbelievable. The support, the passion, the pride that people take is tremendous. And every athletic director would say that his or her fans are the best in the country. And I will stand on a chair and shout as loud as I can that WVU fans are the absolute best in the country. And if you, as we talked about, if you saw that, the post-game John Denver Country Roads singing at the stadium, it reminded me of my junior year in Morgantown, 1980, the first game in the new stadium, new Mountaineer Field, as we called it, Pushkar Stadium now. When John Denver came in to do what? To sing live, Country Roads, and they had 50,000 people singing along in that building. Before that game, we went out and beat Cincinnati. That'll stay with me for forever. So it's important. There's no question. And I think it's one of the positive assets that the university really has, because everybody from the state rallies around the Mountaineers. And that's been that way for years. And I hope going forward, it's the same way. A lot of changes right now in college athletics. As you know, we could do a whole show about that. But I'm confident that one thing that won't change is the pride, the passion that Mountaineers across the state and across the country have for West Virginia University.
We're talking with former WVU athletic director Oliver Luck. Our conversation with him continues after this break, and when we come back, we will talk a little bit more about where college athletics is right now, everything from NIL to what's been happening in this Brendan Sorsby case, because I want to get Oliver's perspective on that. And we'll also talk about the transition from the Big East to the Big 12 with Oliver on the other side of this break. This is All Ears.
HD Media Game Day is your streaming home for the best in live high school sports across West Virginia. Featuring football, basketball, soccer, and more, HD Media Game Day brings the action to you for free, exclusively on our YouTube channel and at hdmediagameday.com. When you can't make it to the game, HD Media Game Day has you covered.
Oh, good gravy. The kind made from real premium sausage. The kind that's smothered over deliciousness. The kind you can only get at Tudor's Biscuit World. That's the gravy that's oh so good. It's the perfect topping to your biscuits or your taters, and even makes a delicious side. It's oh so good gravy. Tudor's Biscuit World. We're dripping with oh good gravy.
Final break to take here on All Ears. We're joined by former WVU athletic director Oliver Luck. And Oliver, you've mentioned a couple of times the transition from the Big East to the Big 12. So I'll kind of ask a macro question, or kind of a vague question actually, but I'll ask it anyway. When you look at that time period in West Virginia athletics, what went into the process? What went into your decision? Obviously, the money side of things is obviously going to be at the forefront, but just outside of that, what else was going into your decision-making process when you looked at the pros and cons between the Big East Conference and staying in that conference, even though that conference was losing teams, it seems, on an annual basis, to then transitioning and moving into the Big 12 Conference, which is primarily, or was, I should say, a Midwestern conference?
Well, if I go back to that era, I think the first thing would be to remember, sort of the events that took place. The Big East for a number of years was a fantastic football conference, but it took a blow when Boston College left, when Miami left, and was it Virginia Tech that left at that point as well? And those three schools went to the ACC. So, those are three very good programs and traditional rivals. Certainly Virginia Tech, right? Traditional rivals for the Mountaineers. And there were obviously the basketball schools, St. John's and Providence and Seton Hall, et cetera. And those schools were fantastic basketball competition, and we had an excellent basketball program with Coach Huggs at that point. But the football side was clearly weakened. And then the straw that, in my mind, broke the proverbial camel's back was when Pitt and Syracuse left and accepted an invitation to the ACC. I realized that there was absolutely no way that the Big East could rebuild itself, and that we needed to begin the process very fast of looking around to see where we had opportunities. The Big 12, which had at that point 10 teams, they were in a bit of a struggle, if you will, because there were rumors about Texas and Texas Tech and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State leaving. There were discussions about Missouri leaving. That was an era when you needed a daily scorecard to keep up with who was moving where. But the most important thing, the North Star, certainly for me as the athletic director at that point, and I would say the same for Jim Clements, the president that I worked for, our North Star was making sure that we were able to be in a conference that offered the top competition that we could find. So we worked hard with the ACC, got rejected. The Big Ten, I remember meeting with Jim Delaney, the commissioner of the Big Ten at the time. Jim said, forget about it, basically. We won't take West Virginia into the Big Ten. So we focused really on the Big 12. There was never an option to stay in the Big East. As we said many times, or as I said many times at least, we didn't leave the Big East. It left us. It fundamentally changed when all those football schools left, because it wasn't the same league that we had agreed to join. So thankfully, the Big 12, which then was really a Texas-based league, and I lived in Texas, played football down there for the Houston Oilers, went to law school at the University of Texas, knew a number of Texas folks, whether it was at Baylor or Texas Tech, the University of Texas, TCU and WVU joined really at the same time. So I think having some of the connections down there helped, but it was absolutely another existential moment for the university, because we didn't want to stay in the Big East. The Big East became the American Conference, and it's conceivable that, had we not been able to get into the Big 12, that we would have ended up, for a number of years, like South Florida, for example, or Cincinnati, before they recently joined, the Big 12, or UCF. Those schools all spent a number of years, kind of call it purgatory, if you will, in the old AAC, the American Athletic Conference. The American is now changed dramatically. It's a pretty good conference, quite honestly, with Tulane and others. But it was an existential moment for us to make sure that we could continue to compete at the highest possible level. And I would say that the Big 12 schools across the board, whether it's our neighbors in the East, Cincinnati, UCF, or as you go west, Houston, and traditional schools, Kansas State, et cetera, Iowa State, we're all very similar. We've got a lot of similarities, and I think the competition in that conference in all the sports has been tremendous, and it's allowed us. And baseball is a great example. It's allowed us to really elevate our programs, because week in, week out, the competition in the Big 12 is top notch.
You mentioned the Big Ten and the ACC there, and I want to give my stance on this, because as I mentioned before with you before we started this, I completely understand the reasoning behind it. I understand why West Virginia has stayed in this conference for as long as they have now, over a decade. And for the right reasons, regardless of what's happening around, I think it helps West Virginia from not only a competitive landscape, but also from a financial landscape, because obviously the Big Ten and the SEC are your two big dogs, as you like to say. But the ACC has always been one of those conferences, whether it be football or other Olympic sports, has always been hanging around. It's not quite to the extent of the Big Ten or the SEC, because it's similar to the Big 12. But I I feel that the Big 12 Conference has been a great conference and a great ally for the university and the athletic department, just in what I just outlined. But from your perspective, with how college athletics has transformed and taken shape over the last, oh man, you can say last week even, or even the last 3 days, but just from the last 3 to 5 years even, does it still feel, or do you still feel let me rephrase. Do you still feel that the move going from the Big East to the Big 12 still feels logical and logistical over a decade later?
There's a number of different ways of looking at it. We, at the time when the Big 12 was considering its expansion, which ultimately included us and TCU, we were in a little bit of a dogfight with our friends in Louisville. And if you remember, we had Senator Rockefeller advocating for us in the United States Senate, but Louisville had a pretty good alum for them who had a lot of clout at that point, which was Senator McConnell, a very proud Louisville graduate. So the gloves were off when, so to speak, with us in Louisville, trying to get that last spot in the Big 12, and thankfully we got it. Louisville also, shortly after that, moved into the ACC. You could argue that we, West Virginia University, should be in the ACC based on geography, but as geography doesn't seem to matter much anymore in a lot of the conferences, including the Big Ten.
True.
And the ACC is a great conference, great, I think, football, great basketball, marvelous Olympic sports. I think we would have been successful in that conference. But for whatever reason, the ACC at that point said no. We're not interested. We're not at this point going to expand. We have what we want with Boston College and Virginia Tech and Miami at that point, and then later on, Louisville. And there's still, in my mind, a great athletic program, flagship school of the state that should be in the ACC, and that's Connecticut, UConn. Think of how well they've done over the years and how their football, has improved certainly in the last couple 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important thing is we got a great conference. The Big 12, in my estimation, has schools that look just like us, and that's fantastic. Brett Yormark, the commissioner, has done a marvelous job, and across the board, we're getting teams in all the NCAA championships as a conference. So I think it's absolutely the right place for us.
2 more questions for you, and I appreciate your time because this has been a very insightful conversation. But one of the things, as I jokingly mentioned about the time frame of how collegiate athletics has changed in the last, couple of days, last week, even the last couple of hours, even one of the more recent news, probably the most prominent news in the college sports realm, has been the news about Brendan Sorsby, who's now the quarterback at Texas Tech, and him now filing an injunction against the NCAA. And now you obviously have talks of Big 12 schools and conference and coaches saying, hey, we don't want to play you all now. I mean, you guys got a guy that's been betting on collegiate sports now illegally, and it's just downright wrong. So just from your perspective and then obviously he gets the injunction against the NCAA in the state of Texas. I mean, there's no rules, it seems like, anymore. It just seems now with everything from name, image, and likeness to the transfer portal to now this. I mean, it just seems like the whole thing. And I think Paul Feinbaum from ESPN and the SEC Network put it perfectly today on Get Up on ESPN. We're at DEFCON 1 right now in collegiate athletics. I mean, just from where we're at, it just always seems like I'll say it like this. I'm not surprised in the slightest with anything that happens anymore in collegiate athletics. So just from your perspective, and I know I'm long-winded with this, but just with that whole Sorsby thing, what your thoughts on that and how that's been handled thus far?
Well, college athletics at the highest level, the top, 75, 80 teams, same thing, on the football side, same thing on the basketball side. College athletics, to a certain degree, has been a victim of its own success. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. People love it. The networks love it. college football is the second most popular television sport behind the NFL. And the NFL, as you know, is a juggernaut. So what's happened is there's been so much money injected into the system. It's become a commercial enterprise, and it wasn't a commercial enterprise when it got started. 55, 160 years ago when Rutgers played Princeton way back in the day, 1869. So it's become a commercial enterprise, and the laws that we have our jurisprudence, differentiates between amateur sport and commercial sport, and more big-time college athletics has become commercial. So the NCAA, which historically, was the governing body for college athletics, the NCAA has been eviscerated in its authority. The NCAA said, no, Brendan Sorsby cannot play. He violated these rules, and he committed the cardinal sin of betting on his own team. Done. He's finished. And tough luck, right? You make your bed and you sleep in it. Mm-hmm. So, but the NCAA lost an injunction, and that's because, quite honestly, we've become such a commercial enterprise that the NCAA's authority has been eviscerated because it violated the rights of Brendan Sorsby. So this may get overturned at the appeals court in Texas. It may not. But in any event, college athletics can only survive in its form today if there is a governing body, whether it's the NCAA or some other entity. But the governing body has to have authority. It has to have teeth to enforce the rules. The congressional bill that's moving through the Senate Commerce Committee, the Protect College Sports Act, would give the NCAA some limited immunity so that it could make decisions like this that couldn't be overturned by a court. But that's not law yet, and it's got a long way to go before it becomes law. So it's in a state of it being college athletics is in a state of confusion. We're risking a lot of what has made college athletics so fun, so enjoyable, not just for the student athletes, but for fans as well. The transfer portal is a complete mess. Kids are going to 3 or 4 different schools, not graduating. And the whole point of playing college athletics is to spend 4, maybe 5 max years as a student athlete and get a degree and walk away as a proud alumnus or alumna of the university and a former player. That's a big deal. Exactly what I did, exactly what 3 of my 4 kids did that played sports, in their collegiate careers. So there's a lot to talk about. It is a mess right now, and really, I think the only reasonable way to get the majority of things fixed is to have some congressional protection, some immunity protection for the governing body, whatever governing body that is, the NCAA or some other entity. Again, we could talk about it forever. It gets very sort of legalistic, and that may not be the most attractive topic for a podcast like yours. But I will say this, at the end of the day, college athletics is incredibly important. It's important to young people who get scholarships. College sports has provided financial aid in the form of athletic scholarships to more people over the last 50, 60 years than any other program in American history, with the exception of the GI Bill. And if you get rid of that, if you prevent those young people, very often from tough, circumstances, right? Tough socioeconomic circumstances. If you cut off the pipeline that they have to go to college on an athletic scholarship, we are really hurting the opportunities for a lot of very, very many young people, which would be an absolute shame. Plus, right, we're taking away the opportunity for Mountaineer fans and other fans of their universities to celebrate things like getting access to the College World Series. Mm-hmm. Those types of moments just won't be as meaningful if we can't get our system organized in a better way.
So with everything you just said, okay, and bear with me with this, but with everything you just said, put into words where your head is at for the future now of college athletics, despite everything that has occurred over the last, regardless if it's an hour or week, month, 3, 5 years, whatever it is, where is your head at in the grand scheme of things of where we are going with collegiate athletics?
Well, again, we're a victim of our own success. On the positive side, college football, big-time college basketball, and I'm talking, Division I, the top 70, 80, 90 teams, whatever it is. It's more popular than ever. TV ratings are through the roof. The experience the Mountaineer baseball team is going to have in Omaha is going to be tremendous. They'll remember this for the rest of their lives. Their attendance is fantastic at college events. So what we need to do is to put a legitimate structure around it that recognizes that athletes at the top level should be paid. They should be compensated. They're a part of the value creation chain, if you will, and they deserve to have some compensation. But there needs to be a system put in place which protects Olympic sports, protects women's sports, protects the student athlete, also emphasizes the importance of academics. And that's going to involve a lot of people compromising. Right now, as I mentioned, the Protect College Sports Act is in the Senate Commerce Committee. The ACC supports the bill. The Big 12 supports the bill. All of the Group of Six conferences support the bill. There's two conferences that don't support it right now. It's the Big 10 and the SEC. There's this division, and it's a bit of a value proposition for what do you want Congress to have. And in this bill is a very narrow protection for the NCAA to have authority to make decisions like they did with Brendan Sorsby, and then got overturned by the district court in Texas. So, everybody's got to make some compromises, and people have to begin to learn to play by the rules and not to go running to a district court immediately to try to get something overturned. Yes, you can do that right now, but it's taking advantage of the weakness of the NCAA. Without rules, without a rules-based society, no business enterprise, no educational enterprise can really flourish if you're trying to create some sort of competitive equity. So it's a long-winded way of saying we need help. The most visible help right now is going to come from the United States Congress, we hope. That's where, that's what we're all, planning on and hoping for. We'll see how it plays out. But going through another 9 years of the House settlement without having a governing body that has teeth, I think could be the death knell for a lot of sports. You've seen, Taylor, a number of universities, many of them mid-majors, who are dropping tennis programs or swimming programs, diving programs, you name it. And they're doing that because, they're being, in a sense, forced by market forces. They're being, in a sense, forced to put more money into basketball and or football. And, the victim of that is very often some of the Olympic sports. So, there's a lot of work to be done. I will say that Gordon Gee, our former president at WVU, has been very proactive. He was, in fact, one of, I think, only 5 people in the country who testified in front of the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee last week. And he has been very, very vocal about the importance of reforming the system, getting congressional help for the NCAA, very narrow immunity, and preserving intercollegiate athletics, particularly, on the Olympic sports side of things.
Well, Oliver, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you for your insight, not only on the current state of collegiate athletics, but also looking back in time as to where this WVU baseball program was some years ago under your watch, and now in 2026, the Mountaineer baseball team now competing in the first ever, or in the program's first ever appearance in the College World Series out in Omaha. So we appreciate your time. Thank you, and it was great. It was great chatting with you.
Taylor, my pleasure. Let's go Mountaineers.
Absolutely. There he is, former WVU athletic director Oliver Luck, who served in that position from 2010 to 2014. That'll do it for us. Thank you for listening to us yet again. Again, if you are new to the program, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. You can follow us on all of our social media channels, along with our brand new All Eers Facebook page. So be sure to do that. All the links for those will be in the description, and we will be joined by a new guest on the next edition of All Ears as we continue to look ahead and even talk about the College World Series out in Omaha. Again, follow all of our coverage by going to our website, wvgazettemail.com, and we will see you all again on our next episode. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to the All Ears podcast, powered by HD Media.